Should we move on to supporting actor?
Yeah, let's do this. I'm genuinely curious who you have in the supporting
All
categories
right.
here, because most of the ones that I had on my list kind of fell in the leading category because they were the easiest ones to
Mm-hmm.
churn up. But I mean, I do have some here for my back pocket that I'll swing by here.
Okay. I will say this real fast. One of these, it is straight up category fraud. It is.
Oh, you're doing one of these, aren't you? Okay.
Now, I'm doing that for a couple of reasons. One is selfish, and that's because, as we noted, Best Actor is extremely crowded. It is very crowded.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Where are you going with this?
well, hold on. So that is part of it. The other element of it is that this actor was campaigned as supporting. So there's already
Okay, so then it's
precedent.
not your category fraud. Then.
It's not my category. Fraud.
Okay, that makes it a little bit better.
Okay. So I just wanted to lay that out there that while I do think it is, it's not mine. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm just
You're
following
just
direction.
riding
here.
the wave that the
Just
Academy
riding the
set.
wave.
Okay, yeah, okay.
All right. So here are my 5. Ian McKellen, Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Ben Stiller, The Royal Tenenbaums.
Okay.
Luke Wilson, The Royal Tenenbaums.
Okay.
Ethan Hawke, Training Day, is a leading performance. I don't care how they label it. He is as much of a lead in that film as Denzel. I'm sorry. It is his movie.
Mm-hmm.
Denzel is campaigned for leading, and understandably so. He is in the film a lot, so I put him in lead as well. Ethan Hawke was campaigned under supporting.
He was.
I
You're
followed
right.
suit. But
You're right.
he is a leading performance in that movie. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
But it's crowded, and I think he's equally great. So sure, I'll accept. I'll accept the cheating here. And then my last one, which now that I think about it, could follow suit really because he's such a prominent character in this film, but it's really not his film. He is a supporting player. Mm-hmm. Eddie Murphy for Shrek is my 5th nominee here.
There's many things about Shrek that I don't like, and that's one of them's Eddie Murphy's vocal performance.
I
don't like it. There's a lot about Shrek I don't like. There admittedly is. It's just I never cared for it.
I don't disagree that, and you and I are going to face heat for this. So let's just prepare for that now, because this film is beloved. And I have seen this quite prominently when you and I start talking about How to Train Your Dragon with the conviction that we do, because you always get the pushback of, but what about the Shrek films?
Yeah.
And here I am to say that they're okay. They're fine.
Yeah. Shrek 2 is my favorite of them.
How to Train Your Dragon, that series is mountains better than the Shrek movies as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry.
I agree.
If you disagree. And I don't really love any of the Shrek films, but I do think that Eddie Murphy gives a great performance. It's not his best vocal performance in an animated movie. That is Mulan.
I agree.
But I do think he gives a pretty excellent performance. And it comes in an animated film with a comedic sensibility. It's different than a lot of the others that I could throw on here. And maybe you could swap it out with Steve Buscemi from Ghost World, perhaps.
Well, he's at my list. Steve Buscemi from Ghost World is one of my 5.
Or a William Hurt from AI. Sure, you could swap that out. I talked about how at the beginning of this, I am open to the possibility of swapping these out, or any of the Ocean's 11 cast. Well, I don't think there is a lead in that movie. It's all supporting.
That's maybe aside from George Clooney, but that's why I couldn't pick anyone from Ocean's 11, because I who do you separate out? Maybe Brad Pitt, but just because he has more to do, but that's not really a testament to how great the performance is.
I really struggle to separate any of them. It is the collective ensemble that makes that movie what it is.
Oh yeah, that's the SAG winner right there.
Yes, 100%.
Every one of these years has at least 1 or 2 movies where you look at it as, oh, that's the ensemble movie, right? And I feel like from this year, what is it? It's Ocean's 11 and the Royal Tenenbaums, right? I feel like those are the two most people would go to as like the ensemble performance movie.
Yeah, I agree. It's phenomenal. So I had a hard time separating them.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Eddie Murphy, though, and I love William Hurt, maybe you'll talk me into it, or Buscemi, maybe you'll talk me into it. But as it stands, I won't lose sleep at night over these 5.
I will say at this point now in my 5, I actually don't have William Hurt, and it's primarily because if I included William Hurt, my heart kept telling me, well, should I also include Jude Law from AI? But I don't want to have. I want to at least get some diversity here and offer some out of the box picks to showcase how great some of these other performances were in these other movies that might not get heavily talked about. So for the sake of variety, I left them off, which means I did have Steve Buscemi from Ghost World among my nominees. I also have Ben Kingsley from Sexy Beast.
Yeah, I thought about that one a lot too. I really like that performance a lot. I just think about it in the context of Denzel, because they're both loud performances, and Denzel for me he just gives a much better performance for me. I love Ben Kingsley in that movie. I think he's extremely effective for what that film is calling for. But when it comes to the context of this conversation, it's a little bit one note for me.
Well, and I don't necessarily disagree. I think I'm just a real sucker for performances like this that just so effortlessly balance like fear and comedy, which I think he does.
Sure.
With his performance in Sexy Beast, I would sometimes go from feeling scared out of my mind watching him to just utterly laughing out loud in a span of like 1 second. To balance that out, it takes a lot of skill.
Sure.
And I at least wanted to recognize that because I do think he is very good. As far as a few other nominees that I have here right now, I also have Ben Stiller from the Royal Tenenbaums. He does give my favorite supporting performance in the movie. A few oddball ones. And I don't know if these would end up in my true top 5, but I'm just being a little bit weird with this because I think these are supporting performances that really stand out in movies that have such an ensemble cast. But I love Robbie Coltrane in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone as Hagrid. I love that performance.
Okay. We've opened up a can of worms now. Okay. We have finally gotten to a performance where I've really started to rethink something. We've finally gotten to that point.
We got it.
Okay. Okay. Now you're pushing buttons here. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, then the last one I have here, and I'll be honest, this is probably the one I give this award to. Christopher Maloney from Wet Hot American Summer.
Yeah. He's great. I love him and Paul Rudd. Those are my two. Those are my two from that movie.
But yeah, I think those would be my 5 that I just laid out there.
Yeah, Maloney is one I would consider as well. Really great. And when it comes to comedic performances, it's so different than something like Eddie Murphy and Shrek. Honestly, like I could swap that out. I could swap out Coltrane as well with Eddie Murphy and not lose sleep, but I'm not losing sleep with Eddie Murphy in my 5 either. I think he is that good in Shrek, even if it's not his best vocal performance. And Shrek isn't that good of a movie. Come at me, I guess.
It's okay. It's fine.
I apologize.
It's
I'm not
fine.
trying to hurt anyone.
It was a time capsule movie. I think it was way better at the time than it is now.
I agree. But I do think that as far as animated comedic performances go, I think Eddie Murphy was great as he was at that time. And I do think, Donkey is one of those iconic animated characters, for better or worse. But I'm not losing sleep. But I will say, yeah, I mean, I could swap them out with any of those 3 that we mentioned, and I think that'd be fine too. So I might have to marinate on that for about a week.
Okay.
And
so you'll have a new answer in a week from now when we actually do our top 5.
The top 4 are not moving.
Okay.
Ben Stiller, Luke Wilson, Ethan Hawke, Ian McKellen, they're not going anywhere. Those are in concrete, in stone. They are already chiseled.
Actually,
Eddie Murphy's the only one here.
Now that I think about it further, I almost feel like I could pick even more people from the Royal Tenenbaums. Like I love Danny Glover in that movie as well. I really do. I think he's really
very good.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that's another ensemble cast. If it's not Ocean's 11, it's absolutely the Royal Tenenbaums.
Oh, I do think that's the best ensemble movie of the year. And it's just because
Fellowship
of how...
is great though too. That's in the conversation.
Yeah, but I don't know. There's something about what Wes Anderson is doing with Royal Tenenbaums that I think just speaks to the ethos of an ensemble movie. Right?
I agree. Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly. So yeah, those four are not moving. But in a week's time, could I leave out Eddie Murphy for a Buscemi? Yeah, I mean, that very well could happen. So. Anything else as far as supporting actor goes?
I don't know. I don't think so. I can't think of anything offhand that I would also consider for this one. And maybe I'm just forgetting something that I think should be in here.
I will say this, if I can interrupt for a moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, when we're talking about the best performances of the year, I don't know if this qualifies. I don't think that it does. However, since we're just talking off the cuff here, I will say, though, a really fun surprise from 2001 that I guess would qualify as supporting performances because they're in the movie for 10 minutes, maybe. Our lovely friends, Jesse and Celine.
Oh, in Waking Life? Yeah.
In Waking Life, they reprise themselves. And I did not remember that. I did not remember that at all. So as far as my mouth falling on the floor when they came up, that was really fun
if we're seriously dissecting that, I think it's just more the moment itself and not the performances.
For sure. Which is why I lay out. I don't know if it qualifies for awards necessarily.
We have an award for best surprise moment or best surprise movie, right? That would be this version of 2001 for us.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. So throwing that out there as a fun supporting moment from 2001.
Okay.
I guess that goes for both actor and actress, obviously. But
Yep.
Do you have a thought on Jim Broadbent for Iris, who actually won the award?
It's admittedly still a blind spot for me.
Same. That's on my list. I'm gonna maybe get to that this week if I can.
Yeah. So I couldn't speak to Judi Dench's performance in that either.
Yeah, I was gonna say because it had several nominees here, especially for acting.
Right.
So that might be one I try to get to, but that is right now a blind spot. I was just curious if that's one.
Actually, on the subject of best supporting actor or just supporting acting performances in general, I've always really enjoyed Joe Pantoliano's performance in Memento.
Okay.
Again, I don't think it's one of the best of the year, but I like the energy and the playfulness he brings to it. So it's just a highlight there that I think, again, Christopher Nolan, we don't often talk about the sense of humor in his movies. And I think both he and Guy Pearce are bringing a bit of a biting energy to that movie, which I really appreciated.
Absolutely. As far as supporting performances go, I guess we mentioned this in passing when talking about ensemble cast, but the supporting cast of Fellowship, I do think should be noted here more so than just in passing, especially because the movie is called The Fellowship of the Ring. It is about these group of guys coming together.
Yeah.
And they're really great. Like the cast gels together. There's some fascinating dramatic irony at the end of the film that is effective because of the storytelling, but also the performances. Like all of that is necessary.
I thought about that. I know Ian McKellen was nominated for it, and I love his performance in it. Don't get me wrong, but if I were to pick a supporting performance from that movie that I might consider, it might be Sean Bean, honestly.
That's the other one I thought of as well.
Yeah, but then I also thought of maybe Sean Astin, but I mean, really what makes that character and that performance really sell is what we get from him in The Return of the King.
Yes.
And I feel like that would almost be like a premature nomination for him, knowing how great that performance and what that character means for the story later on. It's almost like you're jumping the gun a bit.
I agree, which is why ultimately I went with Ian McKellen because there's this soft, tender quality to him at the beginning. There's a sense of urgency that comes along as the story picks up. And then you get one of the most iconic scenes of all time, let alone fantasy genre movies.
Yeah.
With them in the mountains.
Yeah.
So, and he's obviously phenomenal as that character as well.
Right.
So to me, Ian McKellen, I think, is maybe him and Sean Bean, I think, are both equally the defining supporting performance. As much as I love Sean Astin, especially at the end, he always gives those moments at the end. It's always the end of those moments.
Yeah.
You could say the same thing about the middle one too. That huge speech he has. Oh my God.
Yeah, for sure.
So good. But anyway, I just wanted to mention Lord of the Rings because we only mentioned it in passing, but I think it's maybe worthy of bringing up more genuinely.
Yeah. And, for how well recognized that movie is, or that whole trilogy is, rather, we don't often talk about the performances as much as we maybe should. We talk about the historical status of those movies, but yeah, we don't often acknowledge the performances, and they are very good for sure.